Today on the Playbook Podcast, former FBI Director James Comey is in court this morning. We'll be watching that one. The National Guard arrive in Chicago, and it's day 8 of the government shutdown. And Dasha, are the Democrats winning? We'll come to that in a minute. This is Jack Blanchard. Hello.
And I'm Dasha Burns, and it is Wednesday, October 8th, and I have no great answers for you.
All right. This is the Playbook Podcast. As you know, hi, Dasha. Look, it's a big morning for America because the former FBI Director James Comey is in court today for the first time. It's an arraignment hearing at 10 a.m. in Virginia, and you just know we're going to see these pictures all over cable news, all over every news website as soon as we see this. And the reason this is obviously such a big story is because Donald Trump, who said he was going to pursue his political enemies and prosecute them, it is now actually happening for the first time. And Dasha, it's hard to think of a comparable situation for America as the one we're going to watch play out today.
And the pictures that you're talking about, those images are a huge part of the point. This is a very visual president. He talks in narrative. He loves the image of getting one over on his enemies. And regardless of how this ends, those are the pictures that he is going to be hanging on to.
You went to all those Donald Trump rallies leading up to the 2024 election. Did he used to talk about James Comey?
He was frequently talking about Comey. He talked about Russiagate. He talked about the 2020 election a lot. This is a president who I think neither forgives nor forgets people that he believes wronged him.
For people who don't remember back that far, just to give you a little bit of the history of this, Trump blames Comey for the Russiagate investigation, which kind of hobbled quite a lot of his first term. Comey was FBI director at the time, and he told the House Intelligence Committee that the FBI had opened a criminal investigation into links between Russia and Trump's campaign. Trump was absolutely furious, fired him. Then there was the whole investigation and obviously ate up a huge amount of bandwidth for Trump at that time. And he never at all forgave Comey for what happened. And there's plenty of reporting from that first term, if you read a lot of the books that were written about the sort of blow-by-blow accounts, that Trump really, really wanted him prosecuted during the first term. But at that time, he had attorneys general who were not prepared to just do his bidding and prosecute people. They maintained the sort of traditional independence of the office. As we were saying on the podcast yesterday morning, Dasha, that's no longer the case. And we have a Justice Department that is prepared to do the president's bidding and prosecute people he wants to see prosecuted. And this is the first moment that's going to happen.
And this opens up a bit of a Pandora's box, right? Not just for this administration, but for future administrations that may want to follow suit. Republican or Democrat. This is unprecedented, and it creates some precedent for this kind of action from a president and a Justice Department that follows that kind of direction.
If you talk to former prosecutors and people who've worked in the legal world in DC for a very long time, they feel like this is the moment that we're crossing a line that we haven't seen before. The details of the case, Comey's due in court at 10 a.m. He's going to be charged essentially with lying to Congress at a hearing back in 2020, just before the 2020 election. In fact, when Comey was asked if he had authorized leaks to the press while he was FBI director, and he said he had not. And it is on that answer that the Trump administration is charging him with lying to Congress. What we do know is that an awful lot of prosecutors did not think this case was worth pursuing, right? The Trump administration has had a lot of trouble just finding people to prosecute this case, and in fact had to replace one of the senior prosecutors with an insurance lawyer from the White House has gone in there to prosecute this case because they couldn't get anyone else to do it. And that's not a great sign for the evidence levels here.
No, but that's why the president this time around has such a deep bench of people that if someone is not willing to take the action that he wants, he has somebody else in the back pocket that does. Again, this is such a massive difference from the first time around. There was a lot that the president wanted to do that was similar to this, but was held back from doing. The guardrails are completely off this time around. There's no way to really overstate that fundamental difference between 45 and 47.
Right. In MAGA world, Trump supporters, they see this as long overdue. They see Comey as essentially a criminal who was going after Trump as part of a big conspiracy to wreck that first presidency. And they would also laugh at the idea that this is the start of the weaponization of the Justice Department, because they say that's exactly what happened when Joe Biden was president. And indeed, Trump himself was obviously prosecuted multiple
Yeah, this may
times.
be jarring to a lot of people. This may be concerning to a lot of people, but to a lot of Trump's base, this is long overdue, as you said. And to most people that have, like myself, that have heard the president talk about this on the campaign trail, and even long before he even announced he was running again, this was a fundamental part of his promises and what he said he was going to set out to do, and what his base is really eager for him to do.
Trump obviously feels he was persecuted. The difference, though, is that there weren't, statements from the president of the United America saying go after this political figure and prosecute them, as we have in this case. We were talking about it yesterday ahead of Pam Bondi's hearing. We have the president on the record saying not enough is being done. Go and prosecute these people, and that has never been how justice in this country has worked before.
I think in Trump's mind, all of this stuff was being said. It was just being said behind a veil. And now he's taken the veil off and said, people have been saying this forever. Let me just say it straight outright to cameras in front of the whole wide world.
Exactly, and that is obviously very much what's happening. Do you think the part of the calculation here is just that Trump supporters who've been so baying for some activity in this way? And we talked yesterday about all the grief Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has been getting from MAGA world for not following through with prosecuting some of Trump's enemies. Is part of the calculation just that we need to show them that we are doing some of the things we promised?
Well, I think this is also something that Trump himself really, really wants, and his base really, really wants. I mean, that was the difference with the Epstein files, right? Trump wasn't that interested in it. His base was feverishly interested in it, and that caused this schism. Here, this is something Trump is fully on board with. And Pam Bondi needs to keep scoring the brownie points with both the base and with the president. So this is how she's doing it.
Should say that all we're actually going to see today is a very brief arraignment. Comey is going to plead not guilty. He's already said that, and we'll probably get a date set for a trial this morning. So it'll be very much a visual moment rather than a big legal moment. But of course, the legal battle is yet to come, and it might be the first of many if Trump can indeed press ahead with prosecuting other enemies as well. Let's talk about Chicago, Dasha, because that's going to be the other massive thing happening today. We saw pictures yesterday afternoon of National Guard troops sort of massing around the outskirts of the city. Our understanding is that they will be on the city streets as of this morning for the first time. And so, again, you talk about a visual presidency. We're going to see images
I was going to say we've got a theme emerging.
Exactly. And of course, how could any media organization resist using these pictures? Because we're going to see the US military walking around, presumably downtown Chicago, against the wishes of the city leaders and the state leaders. Again, something that hasn't happened before. And, I would think tensions on the streets of Chicago are going to be pretty high today. Certainly, that's what our reporters in Chicago are telling me.
Yeah, no, that's right, and I think that contrast again is part of the point, along with those images of it's not only a Democratic-led city, but a Democratic-led state with a potential presidential candidate in that governor, J.B. Pritzker, who is ready and willing to take on Trump with this. He's been very forceful in his rhetoric, and we'll see what he actually does in terms of legal challenges and beyond here. But this is a very clear battle here between the president, the federal government, and this Democratic-run locality and state. And it's once again this interesting contrast between a Republican Party that doesn't want to see centralized power in general, in principle, right? And a Republican president who is all about the government utilizing its power and exercising its power. What once Republicans would have called the nanny state, right, over cities and over states.
Dasha, you and I were having lunch with someone very smart yesterday who was talking about how Trump moves the Overton window on issues. And this feels like another one of those issues. If you remember when he sent the troops into LA earlier in the summer, there was a sort of big protest thing happening in LA, and there was a sort of a pretext as to why the White House said this needed to happen now to quell this specific situation that was happening there at that moment. Then when he sent them into DC, well, he can kind of do what he wants in DC. In Chicago, he's kind of been gunning for Chicago since day one, if not before. And the pretext is crime, which is absolutely, I'm sure everyone would agree, is too high in Chicago, but probably has been for 100 years or more, right? There isn't a moment happening right now where where they can say we need to do this because of this big incident, but they're just doing it anyway. And if that becomes the norm, then you've sort of moved that window a little bit more where you can just say, oh, well, the crime's too high here. We're just going to have troops on the streets.
Well, when Caroline Leavitt was pressed on this in the briefing this week, she said, the framing of the president sending the military to take over cities is absurd. Why wouldn't cities and states welcome the support of our troops, of whoever, whatever resources the president wants to send in order to fight crime? That is the White House posture, that they are helping even those that may not want that help, because the citizens in those places do. I think we've seen a lot of polling that shows people are actually quite concerned and don't love this approach to fighting crime. But you're right that this is not the first or the last, I think, version of troops in cities that we are going to see. And I'm curious how long the White House feels that they have the political capital to do this.
Right. And of course, the answer to that is that there are dozens and dozens of big cities all around the world where crime is too high and residents would like it to come down, but none of them have military troops patrolling the streets to keep it down. And because residents generally don't want that. But nevertheless, this may be a short-lived deployment, because there is a court case coming in Illinois tomorrow when a federal judge will decide whether or not this deployment is even legal. And so it's not impossible that they'll be on the streets for 24 hours and then the judge will order them out again. And of course, tomorrow we also have the court hearing on the case in Oregon. Trump's trying to get the troops into Portland. We don't know if they're currently not allowed, but that could change.
And no
as well.
doubt they're going to keep appealing this all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they hope that they are going to have a win. This is the repeated pattern with this administration. Push the boundary, get to the Supreme Court, see what happens. And there are still a lot of see what happens in some of these policies.
Let's talk about the shutdown, because you wrote a great
that's still
piece.
happening, huh?
Yeah, still happening, as hundreds of thousands of federal workers will no doubt be more than happy to remind us. You wrote a great piece for the website last night about slight levels of disarray in the Republican Party over what's happening in the shutdown. And I was reading it last night thinking, for the first time in like 9 months or however long, the Democrats actually slightly winning something. Is that possible? What do you think?
I think we have to take every moment right now with a grain of salt. But here's what I'll say.
So the answer is no, guys.
No. Look, I think that we have talked a lot on this podcast and in a lot of our coverage that Democrats have struggled to find a message. They've struggled to unify around a message. I think that in this case, Democrats have found one issue that they have been hammering over and over and over again, something that they failed to do most of the last 9 months. And that issue is healthcare and the Obamacare subsidies that they know are going to have a serious impact on people very soon here. And Democrats have, for once, been very on message and stuck to that message, whereas Republicans, and in part because of how freewheeling the president is whenever he has cameras in front of him, have had a challenge there. I mean, Republicans generally have a harder time talking about healthcare than Democrats do. They haven't had a clear-eyed policy around healthcare. They've railed against Obamacare, but haven't come up with anything else. It's been a very long story there now. And in this moment, the president in the Oval Office this week said, yeah, sure, I'd be willing to negotiate with Democrats. Then a couple hours later, walked that back on Truth Social, saying, no, we're not going to negotiate until after the government is open. That has very much been the position of Thune and Johnson, even though most folks have seen the polling that says it's going to be bad news for Republicans if they don't do something on subsidies and the clock is ticking. And then you had this other moment where there was this memo that came out about paying furloughed workers, that people who are not getting paid right now are theoretically supposed to get back pay. There's a memo from the White House that implied that maybe there isn't the legal obligation for those workers to get that back pay. Thune and Johnson on the Hill said, no, 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 we love our federal workers. They're all going to get that back pay. The president then goes and says, well, some of them might not deserve it. We'll see what happens. So there have been these small fissures here. And it's significant because we just, we've seen the flip side of that for so long, where Democrats have struggled and Republicans have been united.
This may just be a brief moment. Let's be clear. I'm not making any predictions here, but it does feel like the Democrats have found an issue where the Republicans are probably actually going to have to move. And maybe this was a smarter tactical, this shutdown was a smarter tactical thing than anyone was giving them credit for. The question is, can the Democrats hold out long enough till the Republicans really do start to wobble? And I have to say, some signs yesterday and last night, Dasha, that we're starting to see impact at airports now of this shutdown. Now, that to me is pretty significant because, as I think we were saying yesterday, that was the thing that really moved things on in the last shutdown. Like, people start to get really angry when basic services like that break down. If that starts to develop and we start to see over the next few days people getting angry about airports, the political pressure on all sides to fix this will suddenly really become a bigger thing than it has been so far, when it feels like the public are relatively disengaged with this shutdown, barring, of course, the people who are most directly affected.
Right. At the same time, even with what I pointed out, Republicans don't necessarily feel at this moment like there is any incentive to negotiate with Democrats. Democrats don't really feel, because of what I just reported, like there's any reason to give up the fight anytime soon. And people are kind of going about business as usual, even though this is obviously the massive elephant in the room. So it's still at this point hard to imagine what exactly gives here. And Republicans are still telling me, even when I was reporting out the story, they refuse to be the ones that blink first. They feel like still this is going to be more painful for Democrats. And they feel they're in the power position.
All right. I suspect we'll be talking about it on this podcast for some days to come yet. Before we go, here's something funny, Dasha. Everyone in the Republican Party now suddenly has to have a position on the singer Bad Bunny. And what's brilliant is this has become a big culture war issue in the MAGA world, because he's sort of taken anti-ICE stance here as he sings in Spanish and so on. We're getting these like aiding Republicans getting asked about it, and they blatantly have no idea who this guy is, but they still have to be angry about it because that's their job.
Trump said, I don't know who he. I'm not. I don't. I think Trump is very much telling the truth when he says he doesn't know who Bad Bunny is. But it's very funny. He's had to take positions on Bad Bunny, on Taylor Swift, on Sydney Sweeney. Like, there's been a lot of pop culture and politics intertwining.
But they don't
stop.
They don't say, sorry, whoever's asking me, I don't know who that is. Trump says, I don't know who he is, but it's crazy. Mike Johnson is like, Mike Johnson, I didn't even know who Bad Bunny was, but it sounds like a terrible decision to me. It's like, come on, guys, at least pretend you hate the songs or something. Come on.
I don't know anything about it, but it's terrible.
Dasha, thank you so much for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. That's all we got time for today. As ever, we got loads more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we shall be back tomorrow. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening.